Hello everyone, Canned here, and let me tell you another story. On one very normal day, I looked at my phone and decided why not play Battle Cats again. I had been a long-time player of the game all the way since its early days in 2014. But I did get bored and took a pretty sizable break beforehand. Ready to get back into the game, I continued off starting at UL 13 and kept pushing through lots of stages. A few of them got me stuck for a little bit, but I did manage to create strategies that could beat them. Subchapter 20, Subchapter 30, Subchapter 40 I was pushing rather easily and without many roadblocks. As I was reaching the end, one stage in particular kept destroying me over and over again, even after I tried multiple strategies. What stage was it, you might ask? Well, it was a stage in UL Subchapter 41, Dead Heatland, being the fourth stage, Hell's Crater. This stage looked simple, just having Medusan, Dreadbore, and some Zoris as the only notable threats. But dealing with the combination of Medusan and these two other zombie enemies proved painful, as most of the good zombie counters to these two were pretty fragile units, and Medusan's high damage and far-reaching surge would keep on devastating them. With my current unit levels, it seemed as if there was nothing I could do. So without any other ideas, I waved the white flag of strategical integrity and did what every PC player does when they don't know any other way to beat a stage. I cyberstacked it. It was a painful cyberstack as well, as Medusan's piercing surges and the zombies' burrows could have ruined my whole strategy, but luckily they didn't and I was able to finish the stage. Fast forward to 2 stars, and I thought to myself, I really don't want to have to cyberstack this stage again, cause that sucks. Is there anything else I can even do to beat this stage no cyberstack, with even higher magnifications this time? Well, there was. All I had to do was add a single unit to my lineup, and that unit was Fiend. Welcome back to Underrated Units. This was my first commentated video I made, released 1 year ago, on January 30th. I didn't think my videos would garner this much attention from the community, but here we are now. Here's a quick thank you to everyone who's watched my videos, commented or interacted with my community posts, or helped me with stuff over Discord. But now, let's get back to the video. Fiend is a super rare unit you can get from the regular gacha pool. Its first form is Nymph Cat, and its second form is Medalist Cat. Let's look at the stats. Standing at 300 range and hitting from 250 to 550, this is a dedicated LD unit. Compared to Volter, who stands at 350 and hits from 200 to 500, Medalist hits further, but stands closer to the enemies and has a larger blind spot. Having 250 piercing range as opposed to just 150, Medalist will get into a position where it can hit long-range backliners faster and more consistently than Volter. Medalist's DPS is also higher, 2.6k at level 30 compared to Untalented Housewife's 1.7k, but her attack is split into 2 multi-hits, 0.3 seconds apart from each other. This might cause her to miss some damage on high knockback count enemies, but usually the backliners you'd want to snipe have high endurance, which negates this issue. The biggest flaw with Medalist is her abysmal health, an amount low enough to be killed easily in a single shot from most enemies. However, True Form increases her health by over 50%, going from 8.1k to 12.7k. Although it's still pretty low, this health increase at least lets her survive a hit from most enemies, and maybe multiple ones from weaker enemies. The other ability she gets in True Form is knocking back Akus at a 30% chance. With talents, she can target angels as well, and have the Resistant ability. Starting off with Resistant, this is a great ability on Fiend, as her main weakness of having low health is minimized versus her 2 target traits, especially versus Aku, which can have random Death Surge bombs spawn over the field. Having a large HP pool while fighting them is very important. As for the knockback, it's very good at knockbacking enemies that are traditionally hard to reach and knock back with your other units. Given the right stepping stones, she can be useful to knock back angels like Sleipnir, Cala Maria, Chick-fil-A, Yukan, and St. Dober, as well as Aku backliners like Le Behemoth, Fallen Bear, Wicked Face, Midnight D, Medusan, and the Foliborian. Knocking back backliners can relieve lots of pressure during battle and help keep your units alive, which is very useful. There's a lot of stages where this is pretty great, such as Hell's Crater, Banana Genomes, Diversity Alkalinity, and Microscope Bridge. These stages have pretty vicious enemies that push hard but slowly, and Fiend's knockback ability can push them back significantly. Likewise, Fiend's role as a general LD attacker can be useful on the many different stages in the game where LD works, like Iron Sand Beach, Flask Hill, Rainbow Bridge Toll, Learn to Hate, and more. There's a lot of places Fiend can work on and provide value, making her a very versatile unit. Given all of these great attributes, you might wonder why Fiend is underrated. Why is Fiend hardly used at all compared to a lot of the other units in the game, even on stages she shines in? Well, the simple answer is that Fiend's effective value is pretty replaceable. What do I mean by that? Well, a lot of the stages that Fiend works well on can already be beaten with other units the player has. Most LD stages can go down to Courier, Housewife Nala, or just alternative chip strategies. And as for Akus and Angels, these enemies can still be countered normally by other units most of the time. Fiend requires a bit of NP investment as well as an Aku fruit for the evolution in order for her to really shine, and most people don't really prioritize her over the other core units in the game, especially considering these other units that have replacement roles are some of the strongest and most widely used units in the game. Players can be quick to forget about Fiend. Who needs another LD attacker or Saint Dober counter when you already have Courier, House, and Ramen at level 40 or 50? However, I would say that in endgame, such as Stardew Valley, it can be a fantastic idea to take that investment into Fiend to make some annoying 3-star stages like Diversity Alkalinity or Hell's Crater just a whole lot easier. Pushing back Exiel and Omens in their respective Baron stages can also be a valuable asset to assist your team there. Overall, Fiend is a great unit, but just overshined by the more popular meta options running rampant. What is the worst legend unit in the game? Perhaps the incredibly niche and weak Filibuster, the underwhelming and replaceable Mechabun, or the easily outscaled and RNG-based Holy Valkyrie. These are all contenders for the worst legend unit in the game, but as you go up most people's lists just a tiny little bit, you might find a familiar face close to the bottom. Cat God. Known around as one of the weakest legend units in the game, but is he really? Well, Cat God is a unit that you get after clearing Cats of the Cosmos Chapter 2, and resides in the special rarity alongside all your other legend units. He stands at 350 range, but has Omni Strike that hits from -850 to 850. His attack is a 3-part multi-hit that starts with 2 weak hits that do knockback versus all except metal, with the 3rd hit just doing big damage. His DPS overall is weak, however, and his survivability stats are very poor. Low HP and 1 knockback means that he can't ever reposition if the enemies reach him, and his Luga tier cooldown usually means you won't get more than 1 of him. On the surface, God just doesn't seem worth it. His low survivability paired with his sluggish attack rate and low standing range usually means that he'll only land a single hit before going down to enemies, or even being interrupted or killed before he finishes it. Even if he does land that hit, the damage itself isn't too much. Trueform gives him a negligible HP increase and double bounty, which is an okay improvement, but not a game changer. However, there is a very important mechanic which makes Godcat much better than one might think at surface level. Units that have the Omni Strike ability stand apart from the base at a range equivalent to their maximum piercing range, and Godcat's max range is 850. This means that if you do fight enemies close to the base, Godcat will stand at a safe 850 range and be able to hit a lot of enemies. His 2 hits of piercing knockback that hit all non-metal traits can be valuable for pushing back tons of enemies, from backliners to frontliners in a variety of stages. Manic and Li'l Rei, both Floor 32s, Golden Guy, No Hope Ranch, and Project Walrus are some where fighting close to the enemy base can allow him to knock back important enemies and make a big difference during the battle. Even without his standing range from the base, he can use an enemy he outranges as a stepping stone to knock back everything else, like on Leadfoot Drive with St. Piggy, and on Fire Kingdom Dynamite using Midnight D. His knockback targets can also be used to separate metal enemies from other traits, allowing for clean critical hits on them. This can be especially useful versus Coronium, but can be great for Super Metal Hippo as well. Another important quality as a result of his standing range from the base and his knockback ability is CatGod's ability to cheese stages. He can be used to knock back enemies behind the base and let your units take out the base instead, whether by enemy limit or rush cheese. Stages that this can work on include Mineral Treatment, Lady in the Clink, Ashes Just Ahead, and most importantly, Protein Cartel, which can be a very difficult stage to clear normally, especially on 3 stars. Being able to carry or outright cheese some of these notable stages gives CatGod a very unique role compared to anything else in the game. While some units are generalists or trait specialists, CatGod is uniquely a stage specialist. The inner mechanics of the stage, like stage length, enemy limit, and enemy spawn times can allow CatGod to exploit his strongest factors and perform very well. While he may not perform very well if you try to bring him on every stage and use him like a generalist, there are a good amount of specific stages where he can be very useful. This actually makes him a great unit in my opinion, and definitely an underrated one. While these first 2 units are definitely underrated because of choice, I'd like to cover 2 more units which are simply slept on because they aren't very common to get. The first of these is Brainwashed Bird, a super rare obtainable from rolling the gacha only during the Valentine Gals, White Day, or Gals of Summer event. This makes him a seasonal unit and much rarer than a normal super rare. Brainwashed Bird is very similar to Crazed Bird, with slightly weaker stats at the same level. However, because Crazed Cats have a level cap of 20 until 3650 user rank, Brainwashed Bird gets the luxury of being upgraded to a higher level, like level 30 compared to a level 20 Crazed UFO, and has better stats during that time. He has high DPS at a very short range, with low health but fast 3.5 second cooldown. The main value comes from his abilities, where he has full wave and surge immunity, as well as massive damage versus traitless enemies and a 50% chance to do a level 2 mini-wave. Against wave enemies, he pretty much demolishes anything he outranges due to his fast respawn rate and high DPS, beating enemies like Cory, Dober, Berserkori, Toucan, and Elizabeth. Although the wave metagame is pretty much dead at this point of the game from Octo and Dancer, he can be useful in this way if you haven't obtained both of them yet, or if the wave stage does too much damage for Octo to always be alive, like Cave Conclusion or Agilo Highlands. His anti-traitless niche in particular is very good, as most traitless enemies are very short range, and his high DPS paired with his low cooldown creates an exponential DPS stack that rises above even Hitman Cat. Of course, Hitman Cat has more range and the valuable novelty of hitting Arost, who is probably the most relevant traitless enemy. Though, Hitman is generally a late or endgame unit that you won't get for a while, allowing Brainwashed UFO to be a strong unit on a few occasions, like Lonely Goldfish or Anatomy Forest. His surge immunity can be useful now and then for stages with chip surges, but he usually isn't a good direct counter to those enemies. Well, aside from Wicked Macho Legs, which he completely destroys. Although not the most overpowered unit, Brainwashed UFO still isn't a joke and can be quite useful at times, just being another fairly good specialist unit that's in the game. The last unit here is actually a collab unit, which makes it very difficult to obtain, and the reason behind why no one really thinks about it. This is Reunion Li'l Rei, a super rare you can get from rolling the gacha during the Evangelion collab. She's a mid-range unit that has good health, damage, DPS, with a fair cost and cooldown. Her main highlight is that she has a ton of anti-angel abilities, having strong versus them, a 50% chance to weaken them for 6.7 seconds, an immunity to weaken, and a 20% chance to dodge them for 2 whole seconds. All of these abilities combine together to give her a crazy level of endurance against angel enemies. Her strong modifier first increases her bulk against them, then her weaken decreases their attack power, and if she activates the dodge against them, which she will quite often due to being able to tank a lot of hits from them, she will last even longer. Her damage output against angels is nothing to scoff at either at her range, and her weaken immunity means she can destroy Winged Piggy. I honestly think she could be a contender for the best anti-angel in the game, period. A very bold title considering that we have Ramen in this game. But while Ramen is immortal against angels, Rei is also that and delivers back amazing damage and support weakens. She can consistently solo a lot of pure angel stages and does excellent against heavy non-pure ones with just a little bit of support. You can even use her as a generalist mid-ranger as she has fairly good stats, while having a bonus against angel enemies if the respective stage has some. Although she doesn't do as much damage as Mushroom Cat, she still has slightly higher range and much better survivability against angels than him. Most people who have used or seen Reunion Li'l Rei do understand her power, but just the fact that she's an obscure collab gacha makes her not very well known or owned, causing her to be underrated. And well, that's pretty much it for all the underrated units I wanted to talk about. Maybe there will be more in the future, but as of now, I think we're done with this series. Well, actually, we're done with the underrated non-Uber units, so you can anticipate for one on Ubers to drop in the future. But remember, it's fun to experiment with a lot of niche units, and maybe if you're lucky, you'll find your own underrated unit. And as always, have a good day.